Hey, this is Candia Raquel, and you are at the Sensual Sessions podcast, the place to explore sensing pleasure through your senses and moving in a way that is free from inhibition and full of self expression. If you're new, please go to my website www.centraldepoder to get yourself signed up and get these episodes delivered weekly on your inbox. This is at www.centrodepoder.com. And today we have a very special guest. This is Jeffrey Schwinghammer. He is a Feldenkrais method practitioner. He's also a filmmaker and the host to the Expand Your Ability podcast. Jeffrey, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Candia.
Such a pleasure. And I saw that recently you posted a very interesting episode around insecurity. And I want to ask you in regards to that very important topic, because insecurity definitely gets in the way of experiencing pleasure. So, what are your thoughts around insecurity?
It's a big topic, so let's take it bit by bit. So insecurity, it's hard not to have insecurity, right? There's so many reasons for us to feel insecure, right? I mean, when we are born and, very small in the world, we are vulnerable in some sense. We are insecure, right? And we rely on others to help us feel secure. And as we grow and learn, and the key word here is learn, we learn what we can trust and what we can't trust. And when we don't feel like we can trust something or somebody or a situation, we learn that in some way. We learn that in our thinking, in our movement, in our sensing, in our feeling. And because we want to generally protect ourselves, it makes sense to be to do something, right? We develop some sort of compensation pattern or some sort of protective pattern, right? It's just kind of what we do. It's just how we learn to be. And but the thing is, that if we learn these patterns and then kind of lose track of them because we learn them when we're young, we don't really know what we do. We kind of just act out and we think it's our personality, but our personality can be filled with these little bits of insecurity everywhere, all these things. I have a great collection of insecurities that I've been working through and learning to turn off and inhibit and find new choices. And so insecurity is kind of a part of the choices we don't know that we make.
Okay. Okay. So, insecurities as a way to compulsively default into stuff that is somehow related to trust, to issues around trust. So to me, it's like a new perspective, the one that you're sharing, that insecurities have a root in the past and that they are connected, especially to the others, like to what you trust and what you don't trust,
Hmm.
and being in this state of vulnerability. Because my own idea of insecurities were self referenced, like the idea of not being enough
Hmm.
for something that I wanted. So it I feel that my concept and my ideas of insecurities were like in regards to a judgmental aspect in me, a blaming aspect, and then the habit of feeling guilty for not doing or being enough, and ashamed for for that, which now like it's like a wow, super strong surprise that okay, Candia, it's not all about you. Like, don't be selfish even in the aspects that are bad for you. uh, because definitely it has to do with the others. Like
Mm.
the it's we don't live in isolation. We live in an environment and we are a part of it, and we are structurally coupled, and we with everything around us, and we make synergies or we block the process. So yeah, definitely the context plays a huge role in not being or not feeling secure. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, well, if I may, there's we learn to adapt to environments in a way that's quite unique to us humans compared to other animals, right? Other animals kind of rely on their hereditary instinctual knowledge that they've learned as a collective over many generations. And humans are a bit different in that like we are very adaptable to different environments. And I think that's a real big idea. Like we can live all over the planet. We can live in rural towns and cities and like big families, small families, like and everyone has such a unique individual experience, right? They have their own parents, even siblings in a family have a different experience of their parents in regards to the other sibling, right? It's just and we learn to adapt, right? We learn to make do, right? And all those learnings, of course, we're going to take that into our future, right? Even if we leave the family home, we're still going to take those learnings elsewhere. Now, those learnings often become invisible to us, right? Even if we enter this other situation, maybe it's a relationship or something, we might not realize how the learnings we have from our parents or caregivers or siblings, all that is actually influencing how we perceive what's going on. It changes our perception of like, oh, what is happening right now? Well, it's informed by our past. What else would it be informed by?
yeah, and so it's the past. And how does it translate to the present of movement, especially movement, just as spontaneous movement, and movement that is embedded in action, like
Right.
from the Feldenkrais method practitioner perspective, and for the ones that say Felden what, Feldenkrais is a method that educates on awareness by the means of movement. It's a somatic method, one of my favorites. That's why I invited Jeffrey here to tell us his views.
Yeah. So when we talk about like our learnings from childhood and all, all this stuff and how we relate to others, like why would we be interested in movement, right? Like shouldn't we be interested in feelings or thoughts, right? Like, and I think all that's important. This is just like another doorway in to your experience. And I think it's great to have multiple doorways into your experience, right? Because the more tools we have, the more angles we can see, the more ability we can have to perceive, right? It's like the blind men holding the elephant, and one person's got the trunk, and one person's got the tail, and one person's got the leg. They all sense something a little bit different.
Yeah,
They perceive it differently. So I think Feldenkrais is just another great option, another great opportunity to sense something and explore something new about yourself. And so, like, why is movement helpful? So maybe we can take an experience here, and you don't have to go into any details or you don't have to share anything private, but you mentioned earlier feeling like feelings of not enough, yeah,
yeah,
or that judgmental or that blaming. And even as you kind of just mention those words, or maybe there's like memories that come with that. And I'm willing to bet that there's probably some sort of physical movement, right? Some sort of shape that you take. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
there's some
definitely.
may I mean, common shapes, right? Maybe it's something like the chin tucks or the chest depresses, or maybe you feel awkward in your seats and you want to shift your weight. Maybe your knees kind of draw together or something, or you want to cross your arms. There's some movement, right? And it's going to be different for each person, per experience. There's just a multiplicity of possible movements, right? But there's some themes we can be attentive to. And so these movements happen. The movements are part of this fabric where all these threads are woven together, and there's movement threads, there's thinking threads, feeling threads, sensation threads. Like so you can like move the whole fabric by tugging on one of the threads, right?
Yes, right.
And so since they're all related, there's some benefits to using movement to observe, okay, when I feel this or when I experience this, what is it that I do? What is the shape that I take? And so the
Okay.
Feldenkrais approach is, as a whole, let's become masters of taking many, many different shapes
Okay.
and learning about all the shapes we can take. And by taking all these different shapes, we learn about what it is, what shapes are familiar to me, that are compulsive to me, uh, that I like, that I dislike. And then it's a unique, special kind of process that actually makes more shapes possible through the process of exploring.
Yes.
And then when you have all these shapes possible within you, you can catch the shapes that are around not enough or judgmental or blaming. You can catch those shapes and you go, oh, I'm going into that shape. This is the shape right now. And oh, I can catch the thinking, I can catch the feeling, and I can catch how when I'm angry or sad or I'm reactive, I'm in a shape. My fists are in a shape. My chest is in a shape. My face is in a shape. You can catch all these shapes. And then when you catch them, then you have the opportunity to say, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to do something different?
Wow. Wow. This is this is a very practical tool actually to
Yeah.
take an active role into responding creatively to your experience. Like, oh wow, I find myself in this state. And the operative thing here, in my understanding, is the nuanced in the beingness, in the identity. In Spanish, we have two different words for being. We have ser y estar. Those are two different verbs. So one refers to being as the identity, like I am being myself, I am myself. And the other is in regards to the position in a place, like I am sitting. Those are two different verbs, but in English it's the same. And I now, like, the wow super aha moment is that in our subjective experience, we tend to confuse those two different aspects of the being, that in English those are two different verbs. So it's not the same being insecure than being insecure. Meaning, let me explain. So, one thing is that you identify yourself as insecure just as if you identify as Mexican because you have the passport and you really are Mexican or American or whatever because you do, or all my DNA cells have double X chromosomes everywhere. I am biologically a woman. That's a fact. So there's a difference in the beingness of the fact compared to identity. And there's a huge risk on falling into identifying yourself with the being in a state. So it's like I am in a state of being insecure. I am taking the shape of being insecure in this moment, but that doesn't mean that I am that. And identifying that we are falling into a certain shape or like operating system that is less than optimal for the self give us like the great insight of, okay, I am here, I am in this situation, now what am I gonna do about it? It's like, oh no, I am in a crossfire in the streets. Like it's very good that you realize that you're in or approaching a dog fight, so you quickly turn around and get out of there. You don't want to be there, and then you can choose. Then you can exert like the great gift of being, that is the ability to choose as a mature person, no, instead
Yeah.
of falling into the default of compulsive modes, like the shape of the shape of insecurity. Wow, this is fantastic.
Yeah, and an image came to mind that I'd like to share to see if it helps augment what you just said. I like that the being verb as identity or self versus position, right?
Yeah,
And then, that made me think of this image of imagine a city with all these streets, or maybe it's like a town, just all these streets, all these um, avenues and intersections and neighborhoods and all these homes everywhere. And you can travel through this town. And there's some places that are cul-de-sacs, a bit of dead ends, and it's just you can tell where you are when you look at the houses, right? And and I like that image of like the where I am, that state, that shape. It's like actually you could think of it like I'm in this town and I'm at this end of town. And this is when I'm like this. And at different times I'm at this street over here and I'm like this. And this is the address I'm at. Right? It's not me in some sense. I think me is something deeper and more long lasting than the state I'm in. And
yes,
I'm here at this address. And maybe it's a terrible image, but like what if you got swooped up and you had your eyes covered and you were dropped off someplace and like you're just like, where am I now? And I think that happens to us. If we get triggered, if we get agitated, all of a sudden we're doing something and we later catch ourselves, man, I wasn't acting the way I wanted to. I was really riled up or I was this. And then we kind of wake up from that. The spell comes off and we realize, well, I've been over at this side of town this whole time. And I didn't realize it. I just showed up there. But in the Feldenkrais work, we try to make what is unfamiliar to us more familiar, right? We don't know about all the ways our body can move, all the shapes that we can take, so they're unfamiliar. So let's make them more familiar. And so maybe we end up in the same part of town often, and maybe that leads to discomfort or pain or decisions we don't like. So if we end up there many times, well, how can we make that place we understand that we're there more quickly, and then we make the paths out of there more familiar. Okay, I'm here. What are my resources? What are my tools? What can I do now to shift so I can go to the other side of town?
yes, yes. And it's also interesting to realize that, okay, I am in this side of the town. I don't like it. I don't like how it feels, the state of insecurity. But having the realization of that shape of insecurity expressing only on the foreground without losing the fleshly sense of yourself on the background. And I believe
Mm.
that this is key for adaptability in the changing environment, like with the image that you get swooped and dropped on the forest, and in a situation that you are likely to not act like yourself, but that is an opportunity to actually ground in yourself and adapt to the context instead of being shaped and defined by the context, in the same way of relying on this like sense of self on the background, and 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 allowing the many shapes that you may take to be taken and to let them go
Mm.
fluidly without attaching to them and without attaching to an attachment. Because you can get attached to something and you can get also attached to wanting to let that go, which is very different to just like being very hippie mode, quoting the Beatles, like just let it be.
Mm.
But it's like it opens up the possibility of not canceling yourself. And all of this is to ask you about dealing with insecurities when you are to experience pleasure. Because it has happened to me that I am having a good time and then insecurity pops in and then I freak out and I cancel the experience of pleasure, or I'm gonna have a good experience and then this insecurity gets in the way. So like it's like a an uninvited guest in my experience. And I this happens to me and I believe to many people in regards to pleasure, especially like when you are having an encounter with a delicious steak. So like there's a steak, there's the opportunity in front of you to delight and salivate and drool over, or I don't know, like a delicious crunchy salad with all kinds of greens if you're vegetarian or whatever you like. And then there's like one of these threads of experience. You mentioned like movement, thinking, feeling, doing, but insecurity is on one of these threads and pulls on the experience. So that's one aspect of the question, and the other aspect of the questions is in regards to others, like in shared sensuality. So like I am curious to know your take on going from insecurity to sensuality.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there in what you said. Maybe I can see if I can address what I heard, and then we'll tackle that security and sensuality. Um, when you said something about our identity being shaped by our environment versus our ability to shape ourselves, I think you were kind of speaking to like being an agent in your own life, right?
Yeah,
Being uh, having the possibility to act, because like I mean, when we're young, we can't help but be molded by our environment, to be shaped by it.
definitely.
And at some point, we get to be the shapers of our environment.
Yeah,
And actually, anytime we take our action, any action, we are shaping our environment in some way. Are we doing it compulsively out of just what we know from our past, or are we doing something with attention and awareness and sensitivity and integrity? Is there some principle behind how we act? And I think we can get better and better at that, right? Inhibiting the compulsive and becoming more integrated and like, well, how do we want to shape the world around us? How do I want my relationships around me to be? And I think Feldenkrais in particular is really, really central at like the internal knowing, the internal sensitivity, the internal practice of curiosity and experimentation and playing with variation, that like we practice the skills in ourselves and then we can begin to better and better apply them in external situations, situations with others. Um, and you mentioned not being attached to an outcome, right? And the way you gestured, I saw you gestured your hand kind of I could almost see the grasping,
Yeah,
right? To be attached,
don't be attached to the detachment.
the detachment.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I'm gonna ignore the guy in Bumble or what. I'm gonna ignore someone or I'm gonna be indifferent. Well, if you're ignoring or being indifferent, you are actually not ignoring and
Mm,
not being indifferent because you're doing a doing instead of just like paying attention in something to something else.
mm, yeah. And so if there is some attachment to an outcome, if I get you right, like there's how do we do or not do in that space? Well, I guess I was remembering that there's the sense that you were demonstrating this we can get kind of get tied up having a perception of wanting it to be some way, right? That's just a general experience.
Yeah.
Our perceptions can get so honed in, and that's a muscular act too,
Okay.
right? When our perceptions get stuck, um, or we're attached to some sort of situation, right? Okay, maybe it's like I want to have pleasure. I want to have a sensual experience. I want to just enjoy this music. I want to enjoy the sunset. I want to be out in nature. And then some insecurity comes in and it cancels that out,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like and how we perceive how that happens and oh, what should I do about that? There's so many layers of muscular act in there, and being able to understand what your muscular act is, what that shape is with detail, with like precision, that like by and that's what the awareness through movement lessons and Feldenkrais are about, is like you develop a repertoire, an internal understanding of your own movement landscape, that you can tell what part of the town you're in at what time, and so by having that kind of precision, you can catch these moments, these muscular acts more and more. And at first it's not the easiest thing and you don't always know what to do, but it's something you can build over time, that you can catch how your own perception is living as a muscular act in yourself. And that's when you can begin to like detangle that and change your perspective.
Yes, perception, a certain perception lives as a certain muscular tone. That's why we get so stiff when we are on a first date with the crush that you always dream of from high school, and then you meet the person 5 years afterwards, and it's like, oh, or whatever. Like we stiffen up in a moment that in actuality invites to bringing forth your most delightful self. It's like mm, it's challenging, like for Messi to win the World Cup and not get derailed by the emotional thrill and excitement in such a way that overrides the the fleshly felt sense of
Hmm.
that. Or or I don't know, maybe it's not possible because winning the World Cup, I was to say it's not real. It is real for sure, but it's real in the domain of the symbol that it means. So it's like, and it's fleshly real because it must be. I think it's made of gold, right? Is it called gold cover coated or it's like pure gold? The World Cup. Do you have an idea?
I don't know for sure. I imagine if it's pure gold, it'd actually be kind of too soft to keep its shape for
Oh,
long. I think pure gold is malleable, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it.
yeah,
So maybe it's gold plated.
maybe it's, yeah. To me, that's the idea too, because otherwise it's like one brick of pure gold. Yeah, and it would turn into a mush with
Yeah.
being hugged. But anyway, like if you could, if the World Cup was made of pure gold and you could sink your fingers into it, that would be definitely a sensual experience.
Okay, right. So I think what you're pointing at is winning the World Cup is maybe an experience more of the story
Yes,
that we're all partaking in, as opposed to actually something that we're experiencing with our bodies.
sensorily. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because probably the players and the whole world, by that moment, we are all really physically exhausted. We are exhausted from the adrenal fatigue, from the spikes of adrenaline and cortisol watching the games. And the players, by then, they must have already like torn ligaments, be on their like a lot of kinesio tape and cortisone and I don't know, like they must be like really tired. Like imagine playing all those games and winning. So yeah, I think the same is risked to happen at the encounter for the intimate kind of sensuality that the thrill and the emotion of I don't know, making out, hooking up with the one can get in the way of fleshly enjoying it, meaning can get in the way of the sensual experience. And I want to point this out because I don't mean that's a purely negative thing, but this is a modus operandi of insecurity because insecurity is an affect, an emotional affect that affects the fleshly experience,
Hmm.
pleasure or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a way in which insecurity kind of binds us up, right? There's a kind of a contraction pattern.
Yes.
I often experience kind of a smallness, right? I don't feel so big when I feel insecure. I just feel kind of a little bit more closed in or more narrow.
How tall you are?
6'2".
You're super mega tall.
But I can feel small when I feel insecure, right? I
Uh,
can
uh,
feel the
uh-huh.
tightness, yeah.
And that's the paradoxical and the nonsense of insecurity itself because you are already super big. So like insecure as small as you can feel and as stiff and as as tiny as you can feel emotionally, you cannot be small physically in real reality ever. And this is what insecurity does. Like it derails our mental, more than our mental, it derails our sense of self, our
Absolutely.
self-image. And that's why it's so pervasive. And of course, I
100%.
am referring to insecurity in the psychophysical subjective aspect. I am not referring to real insecurity like being lost in the middle of Mexico City that is a wild, or in the Bronx, or I don't know, in Sudan or whatever. I mean, like insecurity that has to do with stories.
Hmm. It's a really great point about this sort of the regardless of your size. If you're big, you're small, you can sense yourself as being different than your quote objective size, right? There's a subjective quality to how we sense ourselves. And that is borne out every moment in awareness through movement class, a Feldenkrais class, is that the cycle of a class is you use a reference at the beginning and at the end, you check in, you sense yourself, you go into your sensation, you sense where is my weight, where is my contact with the floor. When you lie on the floor, like what are these points of pressure? How long do my limbs feel? How wide do I feel? We ask all these questions, right? And we're actually not taking an objective record of ourselves necessarily, although some of it's objective. Oh, okay, I feel more contact here. But some of it's also subjective. Like, oh, my leg feels longer than my other leg, or one leg feels shorter, my arm feels larger. And so when you go through these movement explorations in a Feldenkrais lesson, we change something in how we are tonified. That is, how our muscles are activated. The tonus changes throughout our whole body. And then when we check in on the floor again and like, okay, how am I now? Let's compare again. We took an inventory before, let's take another. Oh, wow. After that movement, my right arm is now sinking into the floor.
Yeah.
Or my pelvis feels more in contact. Oh, wait, my breath has changed. Oh, I feel a little bit taller. I feel a little bit wider. And when a person comes into standing at the end of a lesson, that too is another opportunity like, oh, how am I? Your own subjective experience. And I don't think anyone's bones actually grow longer or bigger or anything. There's not a objective sense of change, but the subjective feeling of expansiveness or contractedness or whatever, that subjective feeling actually changes how you are, how you stand, how you move, and then yeah, you might feel yourself more vertical or more upright or more mobile. And so that's how we can play with that discrepancy perhaps between objective and subjective.
Yes, that. So insecurity, we can see it as a discrepancy that is a perceived state, like a subjective perceived state, but it's not who you are in your identity. So it's a great idea to just regards insecurity as a reference point of the state of yourself, practicing an inventory like, okay, now I am in the state of insecurity. And that's just one state. To know,
Right.
yeah, and that begins to loosen the grip of identifying with that, because like feeling insecure feels like a global state, like I am
Hmm.
this, I was like this, and I'm gonna be like this forever. It feels like that when we're feeling insecure, so like
Yes.
loosening a little bit the grip, so so the rest of the self that is like more true to our like fundamental nature can permeate through insecurity and maybe take over, or if it doesn't take over, just like have insecurity mingle over there with the moment without canceling the totality of the experience
Mm,
that is inviting for pleasure and having a good time.
yeah. Yeah, I want to highlight what you said there. And I'll frame it in my words here. Like the experience of anxiety, the structure of it is something like I have this negative experience, I don't like it, and it feels like it will never stop and I'll have it forever,
Yeah,
right? And that like why wouldn't that bind a person up? And I think as one begins to detach, as you were saying, or to find that there's more of you that's possible, that you you become more acquainted with all these other possibilities, and that anxiety is not so much a conclusion anymore.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
just a temporary place.
Yeah, a temporary place that served an important function on the past during childhood. But now, as an adult, if you so choose to take ownership of yourself, then that insecurity is just um, a trait on the repertoire that you can
Mhm.
use or not use. Like, I am a biologist, and to me, it's very convenient to have a title hanging over there. And also,
Mhm.
my, I don't know where my, over here, my my certified yoga teacher, and etc. Like those are there if I need them. Insecurity, it's just another thing to have as one of the traits, but not as the one that defines the totality of your experience. Least something that cancels the the opportunity to delight in life, which is not
Mm.
always available. But when pleasure shows up, why wouldn't you take it? Like by all means, do take it. Even if the world is on fire, do take the pleasure that life is offering to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but when I hear that, I'm like, I feel inspired, right? Like, yes, why not take it? And I can recognize so many times in my own experience that I can be up in story mode. I can be up in my head and be like, I got to get this work done. I gotta take care of this, or I'm just, I skip over even realizing that there's something to take pleasure in here in this moment. It's like my own perception can skip over that opportunity because I'm just so habituated at times. And so finding a way to slow down and even be in the question, and that's something I've been playing with in my own movement practice and in my teaching is, okay, if we stop right now and we're exploring this movement, whatever it is, you're doing the same. Maybe it's the knees are tilting left and right, and that's moving your pelvis, and that's continuing to move your spine in a way, and then your head rolls a little bit. How could this just be enjoyable right now? Like what of this moment? If I just open the question and be with that, like maybe I don't know. Okay. What would it be? Okay, well, can I encourage a little bit? If I put my arms out a little bit further, okay, well, what if I put one arm up towards my head? Does that help? Does it does it hinder? I don't know. Okay, let's try something else. Oh, well, if I have a little bit of a smile, does that help? Okay, if I frown, does that help? Nah, maybe I don't like that one as much. Okay. What if I do this thing with my eyes? Right? You can kind of expand open this moment because that's what we have to do. If we're not good at something, if we're not familiar with it, if it's just foreign to us, we have to slow down in a way that we open the window to sense what's going on. Because otherwise we just skip to the next thing, the next habit. Skip, 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 skip. We have
compulsory.
to slow down time.
Yeah, slow down so you can choose and explore different possibilities to see what's better. Like open arms, like hands facing forward, arms to the side, one arm overhead, perhaps. Frowning, no, frowning, not good idea. Smiling, yeah, smiling feels kind of better. So, Jeffrey, would you share with us like a little, I don't know, imaginary inspiration, quote, poem, exercise, micro ATM, or whatever you feel inspired to. So
Yeah, a little movement practice.
yeah, so we get like a felt sense of going from insecurity to sensuality. Like what is something
Oh,
very easy that we can do when we feel insecure? Maybe we are like about to give a I don't know a talk at an auditorium, or we have an important meeting
yeah,
with the board, or we are I don't know celebrating the anniversary with the beloved, or
yeah,
something that is like
yeah,
okay, it's an opportunity for you to fully come forward, huge, and we don't want to shrink and stiffen up there due
yeah,
to your insecurity.
yeah. I have an idea here. Let's give it a try. So, if you like to join me in this,
Yeah,
go ahead and sit back. Whoever's listening, you can sit in a chair, or you can even do this standing. We'll keep it simple. Nothing on the floor. You can be sitting. So go ahead and sit back, and we check in with your contact with the surface you're on, right? So your feet touching the floor, the way your pelvis is on the floor, or I'm sorry, on your chair seat, right? And even between these places here, your feet and your pelvis, you can sense maybe Am I a little bit more to one side, or am I more to the other side? Hmm. Oh yeah, my feet do touch in different ways, right? Is that true? Maybe the knees are at different angles, right? We're entering sensation here. You might think like I sat down, I'm sitting, done. No, well, if we sense, we can notice all these specific details. Yeah. Is one part of your ribs or your shoulders more in touch with the back of the chair? And you might be like, yeah, it is. Oh, do I need to change it? Well, you don't have to unless you feel like you really want to, but you don't have to change. You can just like experience that sensation as it is. Okay. What kind of breath do you have? We talk about the shape of the body. How about the shape of the breath and how it comes into you, whether through your nose or through your mouth? Does it fill into kind of the upper chest? Does it fill down into the abdomen? Does it fill into both? More to the left or to the right? And then go ahead and bring your hands in front of you together, and you can feel the skin. Are your hands cool? Are they warm? And go ahead and gently move your hands over each other. And there's going to be probably a little bit of smoothness or a little bit of friction. Yeah. And you can maybe have one hand move over the other. That could be interesting. Okay, this is the hand that's exploring the other hand. Which hand did you choose? Right? This is the front of the hand and the back of the hand. This is the space between the fingers. Hmm. Okay, what if the other hand becomes the explorer? Right? You switch the intention. So the other hand meets and touch. Where have you gone? Where have you not gone yet? Hmm. Are you feeling with the back of your hand too? The exploring hand, do you use the back of the palm? Yeah, there's that too, right? Hmm. Okay, and as you're doing this, you can have both hands slide over each other, left and right. Okay. Hmm. You can even expand a little bit if you like down towards the wrist. And as you're doing this, you're kind of becoming more and more familiar with the process. It's okay, cool. And you can sense how your elbows might open or close, your shoulders might open. And it's a whole body movement, it turns out to like maybe even your feet change on the floor, even your pelvis too, on the seat. And as you're doing this, what sort of expression do you have on your face? What's the shape of your face? And what if the corners of your lips turn down? How do your hands feel? What's your attitude? What's the speed of the movement? And then lips turn up towards the ears, let's say. And what if you reveal your top teeth a little bit? Hmm. What if your cheeks kind of swell and go towards the eyes? Does that change your experience? Right? And in this way, you're an agent of your own change that you can play with all these different elements of your experience and hmm, see what you like. All right, and go ahead and put your arms down and check in with how does the chair feel to you now? What kind of breath do you have? Does it come in through the nose or through the mouth? How does it fill you? Where your feet touch the floor? Where your eyes want to look in the room? Yeah. How would you describe your experience in a word? Just think to yourself, what's this like? Yeah, so how was that for you?
It was pleasurable.
Nice.
Yeah. To my surprise, I discovered that I can feel, that I can sense my fingerprints. So we have little micro ridges in the tips of our fingers that are our like fingerprints. But like, of course, I've seen them. I know they are there, but I have never sensed the fingerprints of one hand with the other. And also, like, it was like a huge surprise to realize that yes, I can have a hand that touches and another hand that is touched and reverse the
Mm,
position. And especially, it was amazing how changing the expression that is related to a certain emotion changes the experience in the body. Like if the corners of the lips are pointing upwards or downwards, like sad or happy face. And if you go to even more happy and like lifting the cheeks and showing your teeth, like, the whole experience changes. So it's beautiful to see how vast, how immense we are, and how a little of awareness in ourselves can shift our whole experience for the better. Like we can delight in the moment, because we can make this a delightful moment as much as possible. So this is a great gift. Thank you so
yeah.
much, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. I just want to say real briefly here that when I just heard you say that, what I saw in your expression was wonder. I can feel the ridges of the fingerprints. Like your face was just open with wonder. And I wonder if that is a way to describe being in the sensual now compared to the excitement and the thrill of the World Cup. It's
Yeah,
this wonder,
definitely.
it's this openness.
Yes. Yes, it's a non-conceptual state. Of course, of course, the discursive mind is like, wow, I have never ever felt my fingerprints, and this is the first thing that I'm gonna feed back in just 5 minutes. But the discursive thinking was not canceling the pure naked experience of
Mm,
the thing. So meaning that when we are in this sensual state, it's like, yes, our finger is pointing at the moon, but we are not looking at the finger. We are looking at the moon that the finger is pointing, which is
mm,
the difference of being excited with the encounter with your crush or the excitement of winning the World Cup than the felt sense of this fleeting moment where pleasure and life resides. So,
mm.
Jeffrey, tell us, how can we learn more from you?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a podcast. It's called Expand Your Ability. And so you can find that anywhere there's a podcast. My website is expandyourability.com, so you can also find information there. So that's kind of the main ways to reach me.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Sensualists, for being here. So go to expandyourability.com and check all the episodes from Jeffrey, and also follow his podcast everywhere. And also, if you haven't already, please go grab the free guide to Awaken Sensuality at my website on www.centraldepoder.com, which is in Spanish Center of Power, meaning www.centrodepoder.com. Also, please follow, subscribe, click the link button, do everything so I can keep on sharing more Sensual episodes with you and catch you next time. Until then, remember to take the time to sense your fire so you can share the flame.